In 2015, I was a full bird colonel working at the White House. I was physically fit, mentally fit, spiritually fit, and pretty much very unexpectedly and unwelcome, I fell severely ill overnight. I would spend the next 2 years and the last 2 years of my military service essentially housebound and bedridden. My name's Colonel Nicole Malachowski, United States Air Force retired. I spent over 21 years as an officer and a fighter pilot in the United States Air Force, and I'm currently a global consultant, a professional speaker, as well as a healthcare patient advocate. I flew the F-15E Strike Eagle in 3 operational F-15E squadrons. I commanded a squadron of F-15Es, had the privilege in there to serve as a White House Fellow, as well as fly the F-16 as an Air Force Thunderbird pilot, and culminated my career back in the East Wing of the White House working for the then First Lady, Michelle Obama. On the 29th of December 2017, I was medically retired from the career that I loved the most. Resilience to me is about moving forward with refined clarity and purpose, having grown into a different person because of the adversity that you faced. When I think about my time as a fighter squadron commander, from a leadership perspective, I think resilience is the ability to deal with the unexpected in a way that you're adaptable and flexible and that you are able to move forward stronger than you were before. I think it's hard to be a fighter pilot regardless of, your background or gender or any of that. It's a pretty tough and challenging profession for anybody to be in. Certainly becoming the first woman Thunderbird pilot presented its own unique challenges. I will say when I joined the team, I was young, I was 29 years old, I was a captain, and I was blissfully naive to the outside world and how other people were going to either support or oppose my presence on the team. I will admit though that it was the first time in my life that I was acutely aware that there were some people out there actively rooting for me to fail. And I think when you're young and you're still trying to gain experience and credibility, that can be a difficult thing, to have to deal with. Lucky for me, I was surrounded by a great team, and I flew with 5 other, wonderful male pilots, and they were my age, right? So they didn't know an Air Force without women fighter pilots in it. So for all of us, this was just kind of business as usual. And I think that was very helpful to me getting through some of those challenges. There's also, I think, levels of individual resilience. And so for me, it was about making sure that when I was not on the road flying with the Thunderbirds, that I was nurturing myself, right? Especially by taking care, by making sure I worked out or making sure I took time to do the hobbies that I enjoyed, such as, for example, cooking is something that brings me a lot of joy. Hanging out with my husband, doing things with him, reminding myself of the people at that very core who really have my back, and making sure I continue to nurture those relationships during that difficult time. And so I think those things help me stay resilient. My illness actually started back in the summer of 2012. About 2 weeks into it, I realized I wasn't getting better, and about the same time, I presented with a rash on my right hip. So I made the decision to finally go see the military flight surgeon. Went into the office, described my kind of flu-like symptoms, showed them my rash, and I remember them distinctly saying, "We don't have Lyme disease in North Carolina." And that would be the moment in the day that I would become chronically ill for the rest of my life. I would be basically a medical mystery for the next 4 years. So my symptoms would wax, they would wane, they would come and they would go, and every time they would flare, they would get worse and worse. And I would gain new symptoms along the way. In fact, at my very worst, my symptom list was 63 individual symptoms long, covering every single system in my body. I didn't want to lose my career. I knew the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, so I kept trying to just forge ahead. And then in the summer of 2016, so about 4 years from the onset of my symptoms, I woke up in my room here in Springfield, Virginia, at my house, and I had basically temporary locked-in syndrome. I couldn't move and I couldn't speak. And I would go through these moments of being like completely paralyzed, and then I would come out of it. I am the survivor of late-stage neurological tick-borne illness. I went from an extremely high-performing, physically fit, mentally fit, spiritually fit, Air Force officer and fighter pilot to completely broken overnight and 100% dependent on other people for all of my activities of daily living. And so this would indeed be the culminating kind of moment that ended my career. One of the most difficult things about that time was it was never my intention to retire. I had every intention of staying in and serving as long as I could, hopefully at higher levels of responsibility. And so all of a sudden, overnight, I was faced with pretty much an existential crisis. Who am I if I'm not wearing my nation's uniform? What's my contribution to society if I'm not a fighter pilot? How am I going to provide for my family? And I think it was probably the lowest time in my life. So as I was going through this process of reinvention and reimagining, what I could do in this next phase of my life, I came across a Japanese philosophy called ikigai. Ikigai is all about finding your life's purpose, and it's about finding kind of an intersection of four things. So it's something you love, something you're good at, something you can get paid for, and something that the world needs. And as I was trying to kind of look at those four questions through the lens of my life, I kept getting stuck on one thing. And it was something you're good at, because I had a really hard time envisioning myself as anything other than an Air Force officer, as anything other than a fighter pilot. What does a fighter pilot go on to do if they're not, flying planes? And I had to really dig deep, and I kept getting stuck there. And it hit me one day, ask the people around you, ask the people that know you, the people who saw you not only at your best, but the people who saw you at your worst. And it was in those conversations that I discovered what I was good at. I realized that all of the characteristics and traits that I had honed as a fighter pilot, discipline, commitment, focus, confidence, grit, all of those things were exactly what was necessary to help me survive my illness, to make it effectively through rehabilitation, and to reinvent myself into the consultant, the speaker, and the patient advocate that I am today.